Gabo.
When all Somaliland clans met in Borama, where a new president was elected and a new parliament instituted, many members from the Senag region got the chance to meet and discuss important issues. It was here that holding a grand conference in Gabo was proposed.
It was here that hostilities were finally put to an end on a grand scale, and the restoration of all looted property to the rightful owners was agreed upon. Equally important, basic rules of living together were set here and stated in a regional peace charter, establishing relative stability and normal economic and social relations among the conflicting subclans. By its conclusion, the Borama Conference became another milestone on the road to Somaliland's recovery and reconstruction.
The conference's key outcomes included a national charter, a peace charter that dealt with the clans, and of course an administration that included an executive body, a parliament, and an upper council of elders. These were the most important outcomes.
The peace charter drafted at the Borama Conference dealt with security as a separate issue. This approach to security was in stark contrast to other peace and nation-building initiatives inside Somaliland as well as in other Somali regions. This separation of security from the political framework compelled clans and communities to take responsibility for the security of their own territories. Ultimately, though, it would be the conference's legacy of denying any single party to wield undue political influence that enabled the new administration to embark upon the ambitious task of demobilizing clan-based militias, an accomplishment that was vital to Somaliland's recovery and reconstruction.
Agreeing on a government was the easier part, but it wasn't until all of the clans gave it their allegiance that things really took off. And while in the old days a handshake symbolized allegiance, in our case the clans handed over their weapons to the government as a sign of their allegiance, and that's how they demonstrated that they accepted it and wanted to be a part of it.
The country's first civilian president, Mohammed Ibrahim Igal, was able to immediately set up an administration. Although enjoying broad support, the new administration brought no magical solutions to the process of institution building. This process continues to this day. Although it would take another 9 years for formal elections to take place, most people look back on the three peace and nation-building processes, Boro, Senag, and Borama, as fundamentally important periods in the history of this country.
The Borama conference ended in style. It was 100% success because its core objectives were thoroughly reached. I mean, it was mainly about forgiveness between the clans that had supported the government and those that had supported the SNM, and living and letting live. And I don't think we've had any problems to that regard since.
Senag is where so many clan borders meet, where so many different communities with different clan roots converge. So it became quite apparent to everyone that if things could be resolved there, then it can be done anywhere. And this is why making sure there was no more violence in Senag was given such a priority. The secret to this was the people of Somaliland, who were thrilled to have a government of their own. It was the people of Somaliland who were ready to hand over their weapons for the greater good. It was the people of Somaliland who were ready to nationalize their militias so that no clan had its own private army.
If Somalis are left alone, they will resolve their differences. If Somalis are able to avoid the interference of others, they will solve their problems. And we have seen this. Somaliland is a good example. Representation is important. And so the delegates that participate in peace processes must be people that truly represent the communities, people who they believe and have confidence in. There was one great opportunity without which I think nothing would have been possible for Somaliland. This was the fact that we intentionally refused to allow any armed groups or individuals to participate in the Borama conference. This was because if armed groups attended the conference meetings alongside the elders, nothing would have gone right.
I think, first of all, if things are to work right, there must be a culture in which everyone is given the chance to be heard. Anyone who has some grievances must be given the opportunity to be heard, and there must be some sort of a mechanism with which problems are settled.
Many of the participants from Borama remember that when they arrived there, that it wasn't just a place to meet, that when they left the conference hall and they could go for tea, and they were welcomed by the inhabitants of the town, and they could chat with local people, and they had to find places to stay, and they were living in that community, that as well helped to heal some of the tensions of the civil war that had existed between the Gadabursi and the Isak. There was a real sense of peace being made through the interaction between the communities.
We say peace is like a small child. Small children are first born as infants, completely dependent on their mothers. The mother cares around the infant for a while. Then as it grows, the baby learns to crawl and starts to move about. Then the baby learns to stand up on its own 2 feet. So, we say that peace is like a small child that goes through all of those stages. And we think that the peace we have today has stood up on its own 2 feet.